Hi, James.
Hi.
Welcome to This Book Matters. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much for being with me today.
My pleasure.
We're going to talk about books and what we learned from them, what they give us, what we take away from them. And I just wanted to ask you to share some of your earliest memories of reading and some of your earliest memories of books.
When I think about books from my childhood, I think of the Mickey Mouse Club series. They would mail you a Disney fairy tale in the mail, and then you'd add it to your collection. So I had a small collection on the side of my bed, and my mom would read those to me, probably my dad too. I always remember my mom being very integral in reading as a child. When I was in second grade, I had picked out a book from Walden's Books in Arcadia when I was visiting my grandma. It's called Oscar Lobster's Fair Exchange. It was about sea creatures and their dealings with humans as they would invade their territory during summer and how they reacted to their presence. And we would read that at night. It was more so my mom reading to me. It was a sixth grade reading level book, and I was in second grade. So the material was a little bit, a little over my head at the time. So she was more helpful in reading aloud. And I just remember that very vividly. My mom still to this day loves to talk about that book. And I did actually a book report on it in fifth grade years later when I was able to really understand it more. So those are a couple of my memories of reading. And I remember just books always being in our house, in the den, in the front of the house, which was my dad's room, really, and it has become my mom's room since my dad's passing. Now, as an adult, since I'm there with my mom helping out, I've put in my own books. So it's interesting to see the change of titles. All of a sudden, it's Airlines, Marie Antoinette, 18th century furniture, mid-century modern tiki, and a couple of other novels. Always something about the past. I love history and imagining what it would have been like to live in an idealized time in the past, when in reality, though, probably it was pretty rough.
What about what you do for a living currently?
Well, I've worked for the Walt Disney Company at the Disneyland Resort since I was in college. And when I graduated from Whittier College, I continued to work there. And I currently right now work for the VIP division of the resort. And we are a department that provides the VIP tour experience, basically the VIP experience for our guests of the park, as well as our company executives when they're arriving for services at the campus. And then we also have a division that supports a private club inside the park as well.
And when you're not at work, what are some of your hobbies or things that you do for enjoyment?
When my dad passed, I believe now 8 years ago, about a year after he passed, I finally stepped into that role. My dad loved to be outside and garden and took care of the house. So, I moved back in with my mom after he passed, and I took over the yard, to make sure that it's maintained. We have a lot of fruit trees and planting new flowers. And there's just like a sense of peace and solace and accomplishment with gardening. So, and I've always loved gardens. In fact, the Huntington Library is my Disneyland. That's what I always say. It's where I can go and have a magical experience and just dream away. So,
Is there anything else you'd like to share about yourself, your identity, a role that you have in life that's meaningful to you? Just a little bit of background before we talk about the books.
yeah, I thought about that prior to this interview, and I really felt like I needed to discuss, the fact that, I'm a gay male, and I've never really publicly said that, to a lot of my family. It's a part of my identity that is who I am, but I've always carried a sense of shame and guilt about it. I feel like I fell into a generation where, older generation of people that are gay were led a closeted life, and now we're in this new era where it's so much more open and accepted, and we have this whole revolution of inclusivity, which is exciting, but it's strange to be in the middle of it because you know the past and you're excited for the future, but I've always kind of leaned towards the past and kind of closed that part of me off. And I think people have figured it out through the years, and I guess I don't have to ever say, like, this is who I am, but in some ways, sometimes you want to. Like, when I think about your parents, I never said to them that was who I was. And it goes back to feeling like that I'm guilty, or it's shameful. So I'm still dealing with that, but I actually can say this right now, and I'm saying it on film, which is liberating and frightening at the same time. So it doesn't define me. I'm just a guy, happen to be gay, but I like doing guy things. I think there's so much stigma around it, but it is who I am, and I'm not going to try to push that in the background anymore. So.
James, can you think about the first time a book really impacted you, really affected you in some way when you were a child?
Yes, Judy Blume, we all read her. Amazing author, great books, but the one that always stood out to me was Blubber. And it sounds funny, the title, whale blubber, but it's elementary school kids, and it's the meanness of children and what kids are doing to each other to gain popularity or to feel important or relevant in their social setting. And it was so written well about how kids are. Like, I mean, we've all experienced like bullying, being made fun of, feeling like I need to bully somebody else to gain acceptance from who I think is cool in order to find favor with that group. And it all plays out in this book. And in the end, of course, the protagonist realizes that like she's basically played by everybody, like, and in the end, the one they made fun of kind of becomes this like diva that thinks she's so cool. And then the cool kids kind of go on their own way because they don't really care. And so Jill's left thinking like, what the heck happened, And all these things I got caught up in, and it really doesn't matter. Like, I have a good friend, like I'm a good person. And it just, it really struck out to me. But truly, like, the cruelty of children, that's what stood out to me. You don't think about kids being mean because you're children, but they're mean. And it comes from what they see from adults. So that book is just a great human piece. And it has a lot of humor in it. And there's awkward moments that we all have experienced as kids that are funny. And then there's poignant moments that are hard to read, that are harsh. And so I think Judy Blume nailed that. And I actually reread that book every couple of years or so. I have a copy probably from maybe the early 80s, and the cover is like, what they're dressed in is very late 70s, early 80s looking. And I just like clutch onto that book. I'll never let it go. It's such a great read. And I think as an adult, it's such a great read to remind yourself about what we've already lived through, and to try to make sure that, it doesn't continue in your life, because even as adults, we still can get caught up in all of this foolery. The reason I related to the book at the time was we all experience in some ways, well, not all of us, some kids sail through life not being affected, but I was affected by kids. I was made fun of for different things. I wouldn't say I was bullied in a harsh manner, but I was bullied mildly, picked on. So, I have fairly large ears, and when I was a kid, they were a lot bigger. So I was called Mr. Spock, I was called Dumbo. And, it's funny how that still stays with you. So this character in the book is being called Blubber because she's overweight. And, I related to that. Like, we all have had a moment in our life where we're on the receiving end, I should say, of negative energy and thoughts. And it's amazing how you don't forget that. I don't forget how people mistreated me. And it's interesting to see people that I've known through school that have gone on to great positions in life. And I think, well, that's good for them. But like, this is my memory of you. You said this to me. It was mean, and I won't forget it. And have you changed? I hope, as a person. And I guess people would say, well, you haven't let it go. And I'm like, no, I let it go. I don't forget things, because it affected me at that time. So, I guess what they say, you're like an elephant, you never forget things, or, the Irish, forgiven but not forgotten, so.
No, and I'm sure that's why that book was so popular, or it does resonate, is because those things do affect us. The things that are said to us as children, positive or negative, do stay with us. And so that's why it probably is still so relatable.
It is. It doesn't matter that it was written in that time period. Like, the time periods don't matter in books. It's the subject matter that continues to be relevant. So.
Is there a book that you can think of all the different books that you've read, that really made an impression on you, that maybe changed the way that you thought about something, or that impacted you in some way that still resonates?
Well, I think about high school. I think Lord of the Flies, that was one that stood out. It's, all boys trapped on an island, dealing with power struggles and survival. And I think just from the human standpoint, that really stood out to me, because what happens when people are put in a situation and they're trying to survive, the powerful take over the weak. And I always saw myself as the kid that gets killed in that book, because I was like that, like in the middle. I don't feel like I was totally weak, but I was not like, one of the stronger kids in growing up. That character, Simon, was trying to do the right thing, and then he was at the wrong place at the, wrong time. And they all fall into that, village mentality, and then he gets killed, and is interesting to even relate to a character like that that's killed, is kind of interesting when you think about yourself. You're like, why would you even put yourself into that? But like, I know where I am in life, and like I would want to do the right thing, and I wouldn't want to follow that pack per se,
And so when you were reading that in high school, what was going on in your real life at the time that you were reading that book that might have made it resonate?
I think sophomore year, I think, is when that happened. That was my lowest point. I was in a depression. I actually went and saw a therapist that year. High school, like, I was not dealing with, being gay at all. So, I was denying it all the way through college, like straight out. Like, I'm still running from like demons and fears, and trying to balance like being righteous and good, but then trying to just be human, and humans have faults and have falls, and it's trying to balance that. I've always had a battle with religion, and it made me minor in religion and look at other religions. So I'm always still trying to think, like, is what we are told true, and like, can we expand our consciousness into other ideas? So my identity was a big part of my religion minor, because I was struggling with my faith then, and I finally have been able to work through that, and I'm good with God and Jesus, because Jesus loved everybody, so he can love me. And I wish that everybody that was a Christian realized that, because if you did, then you'd truly be that. But that's a whole nother topic. So when I think about books and how they have a positive impact on me, is that they expand our consciousness. They open up worlds that we might not be aware of, that either we don't live or don't exist in our current state, but could, in our imagination or in a future world. They provide us knowledge, words. There are words in there that maybe I remembered studying and I forgot what they mean. They inspire me to open the dictionary, look at it, and go, oh, okay, well, that's what that means. So it's just constantly educating you, and that's such a positive thing. Whether it's history, the words that are being written in the book, thoughts, experiences, that is what the books give to us, Yes, we can get that from TV, and it's great for the visual. I love a visual. But I think the books allow you to have to really think and process and create the visual for yourself. So it's much more stimulating. And that is certainly, I think, the best thing, and what's so positive about books, and why it's so important. And why they are still here, and why they've lasted all these centuries. So,
James, thank you so much for joining me today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm honored to be a part of this project.